What's going on, everybody? I'm Matt Harmon. Welcome to the Yahoo Fantasy Forecast, and it is a hell of a day to talk ball. We've got the Week 5 preview show. We got a bunch to get into with Justin Boone here in just a moment, but before we get to that, we have to talk through a very surprising and very fun Thursday night football game. 49ers 26, Rams 23, overtime win for the San Francisco 49ers. I guess we can call them their B squad. Mac Jones ripping heaters all day to Kendrick Bourne. You know, I talked about this with Nate on the Fantasy Film Room this week. I tweeted this as well, that this depth chart, the guys coming into this game, which, you know, dumbass me right before the game posted someone posted, here's what this offense is going to look like. And I'm like, you remember those old social media graphics from a couple of years ago? People, who's going to stop this offense? And it was like the most uninspiring looking offense you've ever seen. I did that with this group of players tonight. Well, guess who didn't stop this offense? The Los Angeles Rams. Unlike that Thursday night COVID game that I was talking about, from 2020, the Niners won this game. And yet still Kendrick Bourne plays the role of Richie James in that game, going 10 for 11 for 142 yards, a career best 142 yards for Kendrick Bourne. He was fantastic in this game, man. The one target that he didn't bring in was a drop, and he had a lot of drops last week. And it's just, oh no, he's like their most proven kind of veteran guy, which is a crazy sentence that just came out of my mouth. He's their most proven veteran guy, and he's having drops. He had drops last week. Him and Mac Jones have history together back in the New England days. It would be really great if they could really get something cooking here. He has that drop, but that's a good testament, by the way. Your wide receiver drops a pass, go back to him. Like, let's get him engaged. Don't go several drives, and not throw to the guy, have him lingering on that thought the rest of the night. So Kendrick Bourne balls out in this game. Mac Jones, 342 yards, 2 touchdowns. Very impressive evening for Mac Jones. I mean, he's been pretty good in his 3 starts this year, as we're showing right now. 904 passing yards, 8 touchdowns, 1 interception, and they've won all 3 games. Not too bad here. Not too bad for Mac Jones. The Niners, 4-1 right now. The Niners are 4-1 right now, coming off a game where they win with this ragtag group in the passing game. I will say, before we talk a little more specific about the Niners here, I said this during the game, and this would drive me crazy if I was a fan of another team, specifically like the Bengals, okay? I'm sorry, Bengals fans, or frankly anyone invested in the Bengals in fantasy right now. I'm doing a Bengals thing when we're talking about the Niners here. But it would just drive me crazy watching. It does drive me crazy because I'm rooting for good players here, like the guys in Cincinnati. Drives you crazy to watch a group of guys led by Mac Jones, skill position players. Some of these guys have barely spent any time in the building. It's not like these guys were here for training camp. Demarcus Robinson hasn't played in the first 3 games of the season. MVS barely been there. Kendrick Bourne barely been there. These guys, Jake Tonjes, nobody thought that he'd be having a full-time role. And yet, we're looking at a functional offense with this B squad in San Francisco. And then you look at what the Bengals did on Monday night. It's just, you can have all the talent in the world, but if you don't have a good staff, putting them in good positions, and you don't have an offensive line that can block it up, and like the Niners don't even have that great of an offensive line. They have issues. There were times where Mac Jones had to make plays under duress and make plays under pressure, and that's one thing I'll give him a lot of credit for, is he's just got a ton of I don't care in his game right now. Complimentary, by the way. I mean that in a complimentary fashion. He's just playing well under pressure, not panicking. He's taking hits, he's taking shots, he's looking like he's the most injured man in the world, and then hobbles his ass right back on the field. Very impressive run here from Mac Jones, who, I was joking with the producers before we hopped on here that this game is just making every starting quarterback and pass catcher for the 49ers look bad because these guys are able to have this level of efficiency, this level of production without the mainstays. I'm kidding about that. All those guys are good in the 49ers offense, but no, yeah, it's just, I think there's a reason why Mac Jones was a target of Kyle Shanahan way back in that draft. the 2021 draft, when they eventually went with Trey Lance. There's a reason that all the talking points were, hey, Kyle Shanahan might prefer Mac Jones because he can run the offense and I think they could design a nice little attack around him. It's not quite the same as what they do with Brock Purdy. You don't see as many of those anticipatory big in-breakers, that we've seen to Pearsall at times this year, that him and Brandon Ayuk used to hook up on when Ayuk was healthy and at his best with Brock Purdy there. You don't see as much of that with Mac Jones, but get the ball out quick, run some quick game, run stick, run flat routes, and just sit in zone coverage. And this is a back end for the LA Rams. If you can just give a little bit of protection. I think the backs were good in protection tonight. I think the overall protection plan was pretty solid from San Francisco. You're able to just give him that little time. He can diagnose zone coverage and just find that open guy. So like Mac Jones, if for whatever reason Purdy's injury lingers, now they have 10 days of rest, but there was some talk before the game that Purdy, he might take a couple more weeks to get back. We'll see. Obviously, we'll keep you updated on that here on this podcast, of course. But if he takes a couple of weeks, I think at this point we do know that Mac Jones can keep the ship afloat and can really get these guys some good solid production. If in 10 days Pearsall's back, Jennings back, maybe even Kittle is back. I think Mac Jones is more than good enough in this offense to keep them afloat, if not just run a very, very talented and productive passing game, because this Rams team is tough to play against. The protection plan was good in this one by San Francisco, but overall, that is still a tough defense to play against. One more thing just to say on the San Francisco 49ers offense before we move away from it. I don't want to sit here and do we have to talk about Christian McCaffrey thing, because look, from a fantasy football perspective, there's really nothing to say. The guy touched the ball 30 freaking times in this game. He's on pace for 132 receptions. Graham Barfield shows us that here on the screen. Not only would that break his own record for most running back receptions, 116 in 2019, to be the seventh most by any player since the merger. I mean, outrageous stuff. But you know what, folks? He kind of needs that passing game right now, because the 49ers run game, and maybe that's we need to have a conversation thing. The 49ers run game is not good. 25% rushing success rate for the San Francisco 49ers in this game. Compare that to the LA Rams, who are 53.3%, and we'll get to their running game here in just a second. Heading into this game, the Niners 33% success rate on their running back runs, ranked 29th. It is a little interesting that our biggest talking point last year around the NFL was these already great rushing ecosystems weaponized by these highly talented backs. And you think about it this year, I would argue that three of the most disappointing run games in the NFL right now are Philadelphia, where they're averaging 3.5 yards per carry on their running back runs, where they're not getting the same push up front. And then you look at, as I'm going to talk about with Boone later, the boom-bust nature of the Ravens run game, where they're, as a team, they rank 25th in rushing success rate on their running back runs. Interesting that was the big talking point last year. We've kind of seen maybe the talent, I would argue actually the talent of the backs keeping the ecosystem afloat, where we've seen some decline from the offensive line and maybe the push of the run game. We'll see what Henry looks like without Lamar Jackson. That's definitely going to be another layer of a test. But in a weird way, you could argue that the talent of Barkley, Henry, and certainly McCaffrey, not as a runner, but as a receiver, that's what's actually keeping those guys afloat. So as long as McCaffrey maintains this absurd receiving role, he is going to moonwalk to a top, and of course stays healthy. Everybody knows that. Moonwalk to a top 2-3 running back finish in fantasy football this year. But just think that's interesting to note that once again here tonight, the Niners just have no push in the run game. They're one of the least effective run teams in the NFL right now. There's a part of me that always wonders, would mixing in another back actually help a little bit? You know, they traded for Brian Robinson. Not that Brian Robinson's looked great or anything. There's always a part of me that wonders that, but that's merely just a theory. And I know nobody on a fantasy football podcast wants to hear me utter those words that were getting less work to Christian McCaffrey. So with that, let's move to the LA Rams here, who lose this game in very disappointing fashion, despite a great game from Matthew Stafford. Almost 400 yards in the air for Stafford, 3 touchdowns. He's thrown 3 touchdowns in back-to-back games. He's on a heater right now. He had me Googling like a mortal chamber near me. I can't believe it was just about, a month and a half ago. We're talking about what is Stafford gonna be out there? Is he gonna play this season? He's in this immortal chamber. What's up with his back? There's all these mysterious weird quotes from training camp. I remember doing the show from the Fantasy Football Expo where McVay says, oh yeah, he's gonna practice this weekend, and then he doesn't. And everybody's freaking out about it. But then, hey, he's out there at the end of training camp. Things are looking good. Things are fine. He's on Pat McAfee this week. He's joking about, my clone looks like he's doing pretty good out there. Talk about an internet bit, jumping the shark and becoming reality. Very funny stuff. But Stafford's absolutely balling right now. And as long as that back holds up, keep him in that immortal chamber. Do whatever you got to do, because whatever is working right now is absolutely fantastic, because that passing game is just completely like off the hook right now. I mean, and they were able to attack the Niners in multiple different ways. The Niners at one point were just giving them so much zone coverage looks, especially in the first half. They were throwing a lot of zone coverage at the Rams, and obviously Puka Nacua in that case is just going to go crazy against zone coverage. This is from Nate Tice. 49ers have been in zone coverage on 21 of 23 dropbacks so far tonight. Predictably, Puka Nacua is getting heavily targeted. 7 targets on 19 routes against zone coverage, 6 for 55. I believe that was in around like the first half, maybe early third quarter. Early third quarter-ish. Nate posted that. And Puka just is outrageously productive right now. He's on pace for an absurd amount of catches, 10 catches tonight. He's already got 50 catches on the season. What are we talking about? 50 catches on the season. Was he going to have 100 by the midway point? Probably not, but maybe he will. I don't know. As I've consistently said on this show, number one, dating back to the offseason, that the guy graduated to the elite tier of wide receivers last year. He looks even better this year. I mean, I can't say it enough. He is playing, producing, and performing like the best wide receiver in the NFL, period. So he's going to continue to eat. But then in the second half, later in the game, it felt like the Niners went to a little bit more man coverage looks. And then guess what? Then there's Davante Adams, averaging 17.6 yards per catch. It wasn't all against man coverage. There were definitely some zone coverage looks, but they isolated Adams at times in man coverage, and that's why they brought Davante Adams in there, because he is worlds and worlds of an upgrade over what Cooper Kupp was giving them really ever in his career, but especially last year against man coverage. And you felt that in this game, like when they needed big plays against man, that was where they were going. So those two guys continue to just be complete superstars, complete studs. 23 targets between the two of them on 47 Matthew Stafford pass attempts. That he uncorked the one heater to Tutu Atwell. That was it. For the most part, it was just those two guys in terms of the wide receivers and tight ends. A couple interesting plays to Jordan Whittington. A couple interesting plays. He's somebody I definitely, in like a deep dynasty sense, I am intrigued by. Probably just they're too good at receiver right now for him to get a ton of time, but seems like they designed things for him, and he fits with the toughness, physical mentality of the Rams wide receiver. So just something to monitor here. All right, probably the biggest story from a fantasy lens on this Rams offense tonight was the run game. Like I mentioned, the run game was actually really good. Like, let's get that straight before we talk about all the little details of it. Like I said, over 53% rushing success rate in this game. And I wrote an article for the website today. Check it out, please. Remember, we're reading again in 2025. And this was actually a long one, detailed one. If you are some mix of a fantasy football player, a football dork, or a run game hardo, this article's for you. Breaking down the top 12 rushing ecosystems, run games by success rate on their running back runs. Heading into tonight, the Rams were second. Their run game has been incredibly interesting. They're leaning into more outside zone than ever in the last couple of years. Like, they're getting back to the original McVay stuff. They're second in terms of yards gained on outside zone. this year when they were much more of a man-heavy gap duo type situation in the prior years. And a guy who'd actually been playing pretty well for them there was Blake Corum. Blake Corum had been eating into Kyren Williams' workload, which it was the reason that Kyren Williams was heading into this game, the running back 17 in fantasy. Just not quite as good as years past because he's shaving off a little bit of volume, and Corum was playing really well. Corum, he had taken 26.1% of his carries for 10 plus yards on the season prior to tonight. That was the most among running backs with 20 plus rushes. He's been a good back for them. Then in this game, makes multiple mistakes, and it just seems like he just gets completely yanked out of there. There were 15 running back carries. Kyren Williams had 14. Blake Corum had 1. And then Kyren Williams fumbles at the goal line when the Rams were driving to win the game, and then can't convert on the 4th down. To me, I'm giving that ball to Matthew Stafford 10 times out of 10. I'm just some dork on my couch, and Sean McVay knows more about football than me for enough to fill 1,000 lifetimes. But I'm probably thinking I'm giving that ball to Matthew Stafford in that situation. But goes to Kyren Williams. They get stuffed. The Rams had 15 rushing attempts by running backs tonight. Only the last one didn't gain what they needed. Like it was just a bummer for Kyren Williams. I don't know what this means going forward. I still think Blake Corum's probably an incredible stash, but this might have been a little bit of a loss of faith night because it seems like Kyren is the only guy who can make these mistakes, and McVay just trusts him and keeps going back to him. And then you look at the rushing success rate. You look at him just getting his job done. You also look at him catching 8 passes on 10 targets, really being a critical part of the passing game, just a dump-off option. That's a huge thing for your aging quarterback who you're trying to not have him take a ton of punishment. So it's tough. I mean, Kyron's a good back. He makes these mistakes, and fantasy Twitter gets all over him. I get it. People they want to see Blake Corum. There are a bunch of Jarquez Hunter bros in my mentions, and trust me, I got Jarquez Hunter on a dynasty team. I'm interested, but again, still, Kyren Williams always seems to be the guy trusted here. So yeah, weirdly enough, Blake Corum was just banished to the shadow realm for making a few mistakes, and Kyren Williams continues to just eat despite the fumble. So it is what it is. I don't know what to tell people. I will believe that there's going to be big changes to the Rams running back personnel situation when I see it. And after giving a big contract to Kyren, I kind of doubt that. So really interesting game here. Talked through a lot of angles there. Shout out to Niners. 10 days of rest. Time to get healthy. 4-1. Dangerous team. The Rams continue to be a great offense. A good team too. They're 3-2. They're definitely right in the mix here. They're a good team, and they're a great fantasy offense because we know where the football is going.